Well, wherever you are, folks, wherever you're tuning in from, thank you for joining us. This has already been such an amazing day. So much of .NET MAUI love. Let's keep it going. So we're going to do code reuse with .NET MAUI, look at a whole bunch of things. 30 minutes is not a lot of time, so I'm going to try to maybe set up the stage in the first few minutes, and then I want to show you as many things as I can. It's going to get a little messy, but we're going to try having a little fun. So I'm Sam. I work as a developer advocate at Progress Software. Hopefully you know us for some of the things we do to make developers a little bit more successful. But let's talk about .NET MAUI. These are some things that I want you to take away. First thing is there is no barrier to entry for you to get into .NET MAUI. Tooling is awesome now, and you can really share a lot of code across all of these platforms. Blazor with .NET MAUI is an amazing story, and JavaScript is also welcome too, which we'll look at. But the point is you can actually think about modernizing and migrating your apps from maybe Xamarin Forms or maybe WPF, or maybe you're doing some other Blazor stuff with web, maybe you're doing some Angular or React. How can they all kind of live together? So let's kind of dive into just really quickly what the promise is, and hopefully by this time you are all as excited about .NET MAUI. It's been 3.5 years in making. MAUI has been out since May, so things are really coming along, and we are sitting on top of a very unified .NET, which I think is an incredible story, and it's going to keep getting better with .NET 7. So these are some of my favorite things with .NET MAUI. I'm sure you've seen variations of this, but the true cross-platform approach, going native with top-notch UI and performance on every platform, mobile and desktop, that's amazing. The fact that you just had a single project and that we're sharing resources across all of these different platforms, that's amazing. To be able to get to those platform APIs easily, from just about any C# or Blazor code. That's nice. And then the whole handler architecture, how we are rendering the UI and sharing our code, and how we are customizing our controls, that's beautiful. And then Blazor, of course, works so much better. And then the ecosystem is really coming along for .NET MAUI. There are amazing community toolkits. I'm a little biased. I work for Progress, the Telerik UI for .NET MAUI, but there's so much else UI. So pick something that works for you and your app, so you're more productive. Now, we're going to talk about Blazor quite a bit. So I love Blazor. I've seen it from the early days. I'm not an expert, but Blazor is amazing, be it server-side with like a SignalR bridge, keeping it the DOM between the server and the client going, or completely client-side with WebAssembly. It's a beautiful story. Yes, you can do progressive web apps with Blazor. You can do Electron with Blazor, but MAUI is particularly well-suited with Blazor, because guess what? Blazor and .NET MAUI run on the same exact runtime. So that's .NET 6 and .NET 7. So when you put Blazor and MAUI together, you can really share a lot of code. So maybe you are already building web applications with Blazor. It's an existing project. It's a big project. How do you now bring in .NET MAUI and start sharing the same exact components, same routing, all across between web, desktop, and mobile? So it is a good story. And reusability, I think, is key. As we are getting excited about all the new and cool things, maybe the reality for a lot of enterprises is you have to maintain apps that's running your business. So that's WinForms, that's WPF, and a lot of other things. So what I'm trying to say is maybe the two things here on the right, Blazor and .NET MAUI, can bring your code bases forward so you can have more sanity. Maybe you're doing like APIs with ASP.NET. All of that can be brought over. And then if you have investments in JavaScript, Angular, React, Vue, that can actually also feel a little bit more welcome as well. So look at that, 3 to 4 minutes, and I am done with slides. Let's look at some code. Like I said, things might fail a little left or right, but we'll have a little fun, okay? Let's start with .NET MAUI and where things are. Actually, I'm going to take you a step back. So let's actually go into Visual Studio. I'm on a Mac here. I will also run Windows. This is actually Xamarin Forms. So this might be the present reality for a lot of folks, 4.8 or 5. And maybe you're just considering moving things towards .NET MAUI. There is quite a bit of help, and the whole migration is not difficult at all, coming from Xamarin Forms to .NET MAUI. So let's take a quick look at how things were in Xamarin Forms and where some of the key changes are. So this is a Xamarin Forms typical solution. I got my .NET standard library, which is shared, and I can have iOS and Android and Windows. I only have iOS here because that's all I'm running. The app starts out with a simple main page, and then in my main page, I actually have all of these, UI components which are, abstracted. So they know how to render native things on iOS or Android, but I'm just writing XAML or C#. Here I have an entry, but then I actually want to customize the entry. So an entry is essentially a text box. What if I wanted to change that a little bit? So here's my custom entry. And I'm just essentially extending that to make sure the background color is green, because why would you not want to have a green text box, right? So with that, I can just use that in my UI markup. And let's go ahead and run this. This one looks like it's running on iPhone 13. So we're going to quickly spin that up. So essentially, this is Xamarin Forms right now as it stands. And .NET MAUI is also out, but I'm showing you maybe this is where you are right now with Xamarin Forms. So this is a cold start. It's going to take a second for it to come up. But essentially, it should give us one entry, which is the regular entry, which is abstracted. And it's going to be white. And then I should have my custom entry, because I love a green text box, which is this one here, right? So this is how we quickly customize things. And this should work across all platforms. But what if I wanted to do something platform specific? So this is now I am in my iOS project. And what I have here is that same custom iOS, the entry field, but I have a little bit of code here. So I'm going to open this up. And what I'm doing here is bringing in what's called a custom renderer. So I'm extending, but now I'm customizing it for a specific platform. And you can see I'm going a little bit into iOS here, bringing out a UI color from Apple's developer ecosystem. And we're just trying to render that. So let's go ahead and run that same project again. And now I should not see green, because now I'm rendering it special for iOS. I should see some other color. Let's pull up my thing here. That's purple, right? So this is what we do right now. And you're fine to do this, except, and in fact, like for something so simple like this, you don't even need a custom renderer. You're fine with effects or behaviors or other things. But the more complex controls, this is how you start out customizing things. And this gets a little complicated as you start building more complex controls. You want an easier way to tap into the native stack. And essentially, this line of code leads to what's called assembly scanning. So we want better performance coming out of .NET MAUI. So let's take a look at how .NET MAUI will do that. And I'm going to show you various IDEs and command line. Command line makes it a little quicker for me to switch up projects. So let's try that. So I'm going to be here in my command line, and let's look at this thing called MAUI customization. All right, and I'm going to bring up VS Code here because I have it on my path. It's just quick and easy for me to bring up. So this is a standard .NET MAUI project, and all the things that you saw, the shared projects, the platform-specific stuff, the shared resources, that's all here, which is nice. Now here in my main page.xaml, let me bump up my fonts here a little bit. So here's my entry, and that's the entry I want to customize. So my first approach is go into appxaml.cs, which is where things start up, and I have hooks into how the handlers are wired up, the mapping between the handlers and what native UI control to render. I don't even have to do anything custom. I can just step in with some conditional checks to say, if I'm on iOS, I don't actually want to use the handler. I would rather actually want to customize that a little bit, give it a green text box. So with that, I can actually run this really quick, and I'm going to pull up the same .NET build now on iOS. So it's going to spin up a build here. And the the default simulator with .NET MAUI ends up being a Mac or the iPad simulator a lot of times. So that's what it's pulling up. So we'll give it a second. I can actually close out the iPhone one. And this is also a cold start, so it takes a second, and then it's up and running. So this should give us a .NET MAUI project with that green text box that I was looking for, right? So nice and easy. But I don't want to do that for every platform. What if I want to customize a little bit more? So here in my MAUI program.cs, which is my app, kind of getting bootstrapped. Yes, we have the .NET, generic build holder, the builder. So that's all very nice. And I can just say, use MAUI compatibility. So this is where, let's say you already have some investments into Xamarin Forms. Maybe you have built some custom renderers that you're trying to migrate over to .NET MAUI, but you're not quite ready yet. Yes, you want to utilize the handlers, but for best performance, but you're not quite ready yet. So you don't have to. You can actually bring over your custom renderers from Xamarin Forms and render them just fine in MAUI. So what I'm doing here is, again, for iOS only, we are saying, don't use the handler. I already have our entry renderer. I would rather like to use that, which is actually the default renderer. So when I go back in here, and I run that same app on iOS, now you should not see the green the text box. Now you should rather see the white generic entry field, which should come up in just a second. So while that's coming up, if you are on Xamarin Forms today and you are looking to move to .NET MAUI, there is a lot of help. It is a simple move. You have to swap around some namespaces. Otherwise, most of your code moves right along. That's my generic entry renderer, which comes from Xamarin Forms. So it's perfectly usable. So I wanted to point out, so there is some help here migrating from Xamarin Forms. There are some simple namespace updates you have to do, and make sure your NuGet packages are compatible with .NET 6. Otherwise, it's a simple .NET Framework to .NET SDK style project, and then everything just kind of falls in place. As much as the single project is nice, you're actually not forced to use it in .NET MAUI. You can still stick to the multiple projects if that's what you want to do. And then .NET Upgrade Assistant is coming along nicely. You'll notice that this is how you get started. Now it does say Xamarin Forms to MAUI, so it'll try to get you most of the way across, but some little things you might have to still do manually by hand. But again, that's been worked on. So Xamarin Forms or any XAML investments are very nice and welcome in .NET MAUI. Let's actually look at some other code here. So I'm going to go out here and clear this out. And let's see. The next one I want to do is MAUI Chat. So this is going to be a simple SignalR-powered real-time chat application like a Hello World, right? So let's quickly kill that and bring up this project here. So I have a simple hosted solution that's sitting in Azure that just relays messages back and forth. This is a .NET MAUI app, and all that I'm doing here is utilizing this particular SignalR client, and then I can actually read app info, device info, all of those device APIs that are right there and ready for me to use from C#, from Blazor, as we'll see. So I can tap into my backend and be ready to receive messages and also send messages. So here's my backend. Let me go quickly to the browser here, and here's my backend, and it's super simple little web app that just does chat. We'll give it a second to come up here. And here's the app, and I can just say, web said hi, and I can do send, and it's really quick, it's real time. And here's my .NET MAUI app now. Let's fire this up. Why don't we also do iOS? And I can also do a Mac Catalyst build. I can do an Android build. The multi-targeted system is really nice with .NET MAUI. So it's coming up here, and we'll give it a second for my iPad simulator to come up here. Notice that it will actually pull up the app name and the exact device type that I'm on, and I can hit send, and it's going to say, hey, MAUI Chat said this. So go back to my browser. That's my MAUI Chat. So I got a .NET client, which is .NET MAUI here, just with a single NuGet package coming in and utilizing or talking to that backend. Now let me take you over to Windows here. Here I am running Visual Studio on Windows, and I actually have a WPF app. And don't be like me. This is exactly the same code that we had in .NET MAUI, exactly the same NuGet package, and we are just tapping into that same backend, right? So I can run this just fine on WPF or WinForms or anything else. The UI is not fancy because it's just super simple here. I just want to say WPF said hello and do a send, and you see that right there. And let's back out and go back to our web app, and that's my MAUI Chat and WPF saying hello. So what I'm trying to tell you is this piece of code, reusable, that's .NET, and you can share it across .NET MAUI, WinForms, all of the .NETs. It's a .NET standard library at that point, so you can really nicely share code between all of the .NETs. So that makes it nice and easy. All right, let's switch gears here a little bit. I am going to go into Blazor, because Blazor is exciting, right? So let's go over here. And let's stop this one here and come down here. And I'm doing command line. You don't have to. I am just a little bit of a command line, aficionado. So let's go into what I'm going to call MAUI Blazor. Okay. So we are going to pull up code again. And let's close this other one. Now this one is the standard .NET MAUI with Blazor solution, except for this is not just XAML and C#. Here we have pages, and here we have like the shared resources, which are Razor views, and www has CSS, and all types of images and all the things. It is Blazor running inside of .NET MAUI. Now with that same SignalR client being brought in, I can actually go into my main page.xaml. Now it's rendering a web view. So exactly .NET code, but not the UI is not .NET. Now the UI is Blazor, and I can share this code very, very nicely. Here's my chat room. Now in Blazor, instead of just some XAML, I do have some div tags. I have some HTML markup, and then I have the same .NET code that I used to reach out to my endpoint and then talk to that. So let me pull up one more window before I actually run this app, because I want to show you one more thing that is really nice. So let's bump this up, and we are going to go into this project one more time, and we're going to look at something called minimal APIs, right? And before we do that, we're just going to do a .NET run. So we run the backend, so I can hit that from my Blazor app. It's going to do a build. All right. All right, now it's up. So it's a little minimal API running on localhost, right? So I can go to localhost, what was it, 4197, I think. Let's go back here and take a look quickly. 7197. Okay, so 7197. I have. Sure, I should have said always allow. All right, because it's using HTTPS. So here is my hello world. That's my API. Now it's running on localhost, but I can hit that from any .NET MAUI app. I can hit that from Blazor app. It does not matter. So here I'm actually going to do a Mac Catalyst build, trying to show you Blazor with .NET MAUI on Mac Catalyst. So I think I have it somewhere here. If not, there you go. So Mac Catalyst, I'm just switching up where the target endpoint is, or where the target framework or runtime is. So out comes Mac Catalyst application. This is .NET MAUI. It's completely native, but then the inside of it is all Blazor Web View. It's all Blazor. So here I can go to the API, and you can see that I'm pulling back a certain API call. This is the same call. I'm actually hitting localhost, and then here is my chat room. So I can come in here, and I can say Blazor said hello here as well. I can see chat room picking up on the URL. So Blazor said hello. Let's go back in here. My backend is still up. That's my Blazor said hello, right? So similar code, but this one the UI is Blazor, which makes it nice for me to share. And the one quick thing here to note is since I am running on Mac, I am running on the native platform, so I can hit localhost directly. Had I been doing this, from iOS or Android, I have to kind of go through a bridge, because localhost, iOS and Android simulators are different VMs on their own. So really nice story when it comes to sharing code between .NET MAUI and Blazor and WPF and all the cool things. So let's close off a few things, and let's actually look at Blazor doing some native things, and then also sharing code between Blazor and MAUI a little bit better. All right, so I'm going to close down a whole bunch of things that I don't need anymore, but let me take you to a different spot. So I want to go into what's called MAUI, for me at least, MAUI, if I can type, native Blazor. All right, so it's one thing to say Blazor is welcome now to build native apps with, for iOS or Android. What kind of native things can you do? Turns out just about everything. So let's kill that, and I want to go in here. So now this is the same exact Blazor project that I showed you, but now it's trying to do a few more native things. So first thing is, let's go ahead and run this. And we are going to run this on iOS, because we do want to see some of the native things working. So we do a build, and we wait for the simulator to come up. And while it's coming up, let me show you the code here. All right. VS Code, where did that go? There you go, that window. So I can read my app info, I can read device display, I can read all types of orientation, all types of very native things from inside of an index.razor view. This is index.razor, this is a Blazor code. And I don't even need to do the MAUI essentials, now it's all baked into .NET MAUI. And I can also read what connection our device is on, and I can say you're on Wi-Fi. So let's see if my device did boot up here. So let's try to zoom in here a little bit. Here's the same Blazor app, but now when I say show native info, it says, hey, this is my app name. You're running on portrait mode with this resolution. And I can switch to landscape and it'll do the thing. Now let's go into fetch data here. This is the weather forecast thing, where the weather forecast is kind of native to this, but I can actually read the user's location, geolocation, that much easier, and it's going to prompt me and then try to come back with something once the user does allow. So here's my geolocation code, which is, your info plist needs to be there, declaring to the user that you're about to use geolocation. And then here is my, let's see where my fetch data is. One line of code, get geolocation, and it's up and running. Right, next thing is, if I go into the counter component here, oh, looks like my Blazor here app is having a little issue, so we'll come back to that. Let's see if I can relaunch this. Or, okay, we'll skip that, but essentially what I'm trying to do is I can read and write to and from my file system, which is on iOS and which is on Android. I don't need to know exactly how I'm doing it, because .NET MAUI, it kind of abstracts all of that for you. I'm writing to preferences, and I can write to, file system with secure storage with encryption if I wanted to, so that's nice. Let's actually switch gears to Blazor and MAUI kind of working a little bit closer together. All right, so let's go over here. And I'm going to step out here, clear that. And in fact, I can pull this up in Visual Studio. Let's do Blazor everywhere. So let's just say you have a Blazor project right now, which is for the web. And now you just want to show up on native land with desktop and mobile. How do you share code? So you don't have to restart everything. It's not realistic for you to build your Blazor project with, inside of your or .NET MAUI project with Blazor inside of it. You'd much rather have Blazor separate. So here's a Visual Studio solution. You can do this by hand. Right now you can, maybe eventually templates will come along. So here I have a few projects. This is my Blazor WebAssembly project. This is my shared, server-side project, and I'm using it with ASP.NET hosted. And then I have Blazor for native, which is essentially my .NET MAUI project. And Blazor and .NET MAUI are actually now sharing code with this extra library called Shared UI. So what I have to do in my shared resources and in my Blazor project is kind of have those references in place. And then here's my app.razor. The only thing I'm doing here is in my Blazor project, which is the client side here, you'll notice that I don't have pages, I don't have shared, because I want those to live in that shared repo and have it shared between .NET MAUI and Blazor. So all I have to do is point it to this other assembly, which is my shared code, and I have to point it to my main layout, so it knows how to boot up my first component. With that, everything else is the same. This is my Blazor, and I can point it to specific CSS or JavaScript files if I wanted to. And here's my main layout. No differences here. It's just sitting, instead of being in the Blazor project or in the .NET MAUI project, it's just sitting in my shared project, so which is really nice. So let's go ahead and fire this up really quickly. And I'm watching my time here. I got 9 more minutes and a few more things to show you. Let's see if I can go a little quicker. This is running on localhost, so I am going to pull up localhost 5000. Here's my Blazor app. It's way too big here. But you can see that I'm running on Blazor, but I'm not using the main layout within my Blazor project. It's saying, hey, I'm running on my browser. I do get window dimensions, which I'll get to, and everything else is kind of shared, which is really nice. And I can pause this, and I can quickly get to this really quick. So let's see. I go back up here, and I can go into my projects, and I can go into Blazor everywhere. And let's see, what do we have here? We have native, so that's the one we want to be launched from inside my project here. Let's see if I can type there, and now we can launch this inside, let's say, Mac Catalyst. There. So now, same exact project. I just have the Blazor things sitting on a shared repo. And now you're going to get a Mac Catalyst application. Now it does say, hey, I'm running on Mac Catalyst. Exactly it's the same Blazor view. And now it's saying, hey, I'm running on Mac Catalyst, and that's my window dimension. Now this is a native app, but exactly the same views is what we are using. And the trick to that a lot of times is going to come down to how you share and how you structure your code. So for example, here in my shared services, I only have an interface. I want to do specific things like get me the platform name, get me the window dimensions, but I want to do different code for Blazor and .NET MAUI. And the actual implementations can live inside these other projects. So here in my .NET MAUI project, platform info is super simple because I can tap directly into the device info, get the platform name, I can get the width and the height. But for Blazor, I can actually go to JavaScript and get that same information here. So if I go into my services, here's my platform info. Now it's saying, browser, since I'm already running on the browser, but to get the dimensions of my window, I actually have to go talk to JavaScript. And we had a question about this before. There is a little bit of a bridge between JavaScript and .NET. Here's my browser service, and all I'm doing here is bringing in IJS and looping it in with the interop, and then I can call this get dimensions JavaScript file from inside my Blazor code, and that only comes in when it's running on the browser through my Blazor app. So if you're using other things like Angular or React, this might be your hook to bring in that interop and let Angular or React or Blazor talk directly to .NET MAUI if you wanted to. So really good story here. Now let me talk about one more thing here, maybe two more things. I have 4 minutes is what I'm going to steal, maybe a minute from James for some Q&A. Let's talk about one other project type here. I'm going to step out and let's go to CLI projects one more time. And I'm going to go into what's called MAUI Angular. Now you can kind of see where I'm going with this, right? So let's pull up this code base here. And this is essentially, let's just say you have Angular, right, as a web app. And now you're saying, hey, I can do web views with Blazor. Can I not bring that in? And the answer is yes. So this is the classic web view, Blazor web view. And this is a MAUI Blazor project. Nothing has changed about this. All we are doing is not letting it go find the main, the first Blazor component. Instead, we're going to say we already have components, because this is essentially coming from an Angular CLI project, ng new, and then ng serve your Angular project. That's all is welcome. So here's my Angular CLI project. And let me bump up the fonts here. In my distribution folder, I have already built this with ng build with some production configuration. I can take all of this. This is pre-compiled JavaScript, CSS, it's all welcome. And I can just drop this into my .NET MAUI app, which is right here. In my www root, instead of using the Blazor index HTML, I'm pointing it to the Angular index HTML, which is right here. It's nice and flattened out. So I can pull this up with, let's do another Mac build. Right, so this is Angular, pre-compiled, just running inside of .NET MAUI, and this might be your quickest, way to bring in, Angular, and you still have those JavaScript interop hooks to talk to .NET MAUI if you absolutely must from Angular code. So this works, and any custom components that you might have, maybe you're using some Candy UI, that's welcome too. All of your Blazor and your Angular and your React, all of your web components work just fine within .NET MAUI. Now, since we did talk about Angular, it's unfair to not talk about something else. So let's quickly show you MAUI React, and the name kind of gives you away what it is that I'm doing. I'm not going to pull up the code base, but we can just do a straight up build, Mac Catalyst build here. And what you will notice is this is ng create a React application with all the code base, and I can do a build, and it's pre-compiled. Now I can just show it inside of my .NET MAUI app. And any custom React components, that's welcome too. In fact, we did some experiments, where all of our Telerik Blazor UI, that's working just fine within WPF, within WinForms, within .NET MAUI. It's a great story. And looks like I'm a little running out of time here, but I would love to, reach out to me on Twitter. I would love to show you more examples of, where all of this web technologies are now so much welcome and running natively with .NET MAUI on all of these different platforms. So I'm going to stop right here, James, because I think we might have a few questions along the way.